Dr. David Clark.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the topic of retirement, I was actually in Tauranga not so long ago, and the view was expressed to me by members of the electorate there that they will be very glad when that member retires. They said to me, a number of people, and it wasn't just people who'd heard about his conversations about the Bradford reforms as to why power prices were still so high. The member opposite, Simon Bridges, said, well, after 15 years, they just need a bit more time to bed in. But it wasn't that they were complaining about. It was his more recent gaffes. And what that member forgets, though, of course, is that people matter. People matter. He asks how much insulating houses would cost, how much it would cost. He's always looking for the cost of everything and understands the value of nothing. Absolutely nothing. Saving lives is of no consequence. And the news I have for that member is that insulating homes is actually likely to save costs in our health system. There is plenty of academic research out of the University of Otago, an absolutely tip-top university with an international reputation, that proves that investment in healthy housing saves health costs many times over down the line. Now, that member would do well to read some of that research, especially with his portfolio responsibilities. But I don't intend to dwell too long on him, because when he does retire and Rachel Jones takes over the seat, the excellent Labour candidate that we have in Tauranga, Rachel Jones, then we will see some really good policy from that part of the country. He's not universally disliked. In fact, I heard Michael Woodhouse claiming him as a second cousin just the other day. So there are a few fans out there. There are a few fans. But, Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak about this budget here. Mr. Cunliffe has moved a vote of no confidence in the government that says, I move that all words after that are struck from the record and replaced with, this House has no confidence in a government that has failed to put people first, that has widened the gaps where too many of our people grow up in poverty, that has failed to provide enough good jobs and has lowered incomes, a government that has no vision for our nation's long-term well-being but is mired in politics as usual. And that does sum it up. Mr. Cunliffe has hit the nail on the head. This is a fudget budget. It's a budget which has fudged its way into surplus. It's got a finance minister behind it that has been dotting the I's and crossing the T's, shifting things this way and that, in order to make sure that his vanity is preserved in a budget that just crosses the line. Of course, we forget too often that Labour produced 9 surpluses in its 9 years in government, and this is this government's very first surplus in 6 years. They got there, of course, by keeping ACC levies $120 million higher than they needed to be, by disguising $375 million worth of Transport Association spending as a zero-interest loan, and spending $560 million less on local infrastructure for the Canterbury rebuild than they did last year. And there's a bunch more fudges in there. We know there were soft loans to local council and iwi that are listed as a specific fiscal risk by the Treasury. We know that their KiwiSaver auto-enrolment scheme, which costs up to $290 million, was pushed out and quote-unquote, as long as it remains a threat to the surplus, and I might add constructed surplus. We know there are caregiver employment conditions that loom as a cost to the government, back pay relating to equal pay claims and the Minimum Wage Act. All of these things are swept under the carpet, as a surplus was all this government had its eyes on since it had never ever had one before. It is the government with the worst economic record in 50 years. You can see why they were so desperate to get there. But it was at the expense of vision. Labour would have got there, but we would have got there with a vision for the future. And that is the difference between this side and that side. They have no plan. They have no plan. They're widening the gaps between rich and poor. They're watching the situation get worse. They're watching fewer and fewer New Zealanders get their first home, and they're content to sit there, accept their salaries and do nothing. The Labour government will be more hands-on. We will bring down power prices with our New Zealand Power plan. We will make sure there are new houses on the market. We'll bring in pro-growth tax reform in the form of a capital gains tax. We have a vision for a New Zealand with better jobs, with more jobs. Today I want to take a bit of time, Mr. Speaker, to speak about another crazy thing which is wedged in this budget document. The cuts that they are hoping to make to the poison helpline. The 0800 poison helpline is set to be merged under the government's current plan into a combined health line with Healthline, Quitline, Alcohol and Drug Helpline, the National Depression Initiative, Problem Gambling Support, and so on. This is an emergency service. Seconds count when a child is unconscious, lying on the floor, convulsing or frothing at the mouth, and a parent picks up the phone and dials 0800 poison. They are expecting to have expert help. They have toxicologists on the line immediately, and they are able to sort the problem. And Mr. Speaker, those who've called the line have been surveyed. 90% of them said if they couldn't get through on the 0800 poison line, they would have gone straight to A&E. And you can't blame them. But seconds count, and the paramedics in the ambulance would be ringing the 0800 poison line as well. And this is the line that this government is proposing to roll in with other lines. This could cost lives. It could cost lives, Mr. Speaker. This poison centre has operated for 50 years out of Dunedin successfully. It is trusted by across the country, and it should not be rolled into one line. This database that supports it is updated constantly with product formulas and brand names that are unique to New Zealand. The people that answer the phones are the expert toxicologists that update the database. They know this stuff like the back of their hand. They also know New Zealand place names. They know how far you are from a hospital. One of the proposals being looked at, one of the prospective tenders is from Medibank, an Australian company, and they are right now having conversations with the other helplines in what looks like a deal behind closed doors to take over the service. Again, seeing these jobs go off to Australia for a closed-door deal that looks remarkably, Mr. Speaker, like the Sky City deal, where there was one provider who had the inside running, who had the information on the service and was looking to bring things together to deliver a service on behalf of the government. And you've got to ask why. You've got to ask what's going on there, Mr. Speaker, because it makes no sense. They answer 80% of their calls within 20 seconds. And nowhere else in the world has a poisons helpline been integrated, as far as we know, with other lines. It's against the World Health Organization best practice guidelines. Why on earth would we go down that track? We do not want to move into the third world in respect of the emergency services we provide. Why is the Minister of Health taking us down that track? I've got an online petition. You can sign up. It's linked to the Labor website. And already it's surpassed our 2,500 signature target in 2 days. It's gaining signatures rapidly, Mr. Speaker, because New Zealanders are worried about their children. They're worried about the child that swallows some unidentified pills or takes something out of the garden shed that is lying there unconscious. And they know and they trust that that number on the packet, that 0800 poison number, will be answered by an expert and that they will get immediate help. Why the government would want to do without that, I do not know. But this government seems content to let New Zealand services get cut across the public sector, to let the services provided for every New Zealander run down, whilst the richest 10%, the wealthiest 10% get tax breaks, and those in middle New Zealand struggle. 46% of middle New Zealanders didn't get a wage rise last year. This is a government content to say we've got a rock star economy, Mr. Speaker. They say we've got a rock star economy. Well, those gains are not being shared. And New Zealanders are starting to say, what's going on here? Where is Mr. Key's ambition? Well, it turns out that ambition is for the wealthiest New Zealanders, for them to take home more and more and more. Many of the wealthiest New Zealanders are quite happy to share, Mr. Speaker, and I bet many of the wealthiest New Zealanders will be keen to see the poisons line stay as well. The government needs to answer some questions about this poison line. The onus of proof is on them. How will the service be improved by having a triage, critical seconds wasted while a desperate parent is on the line trying to explain what's going on? How will less money be spent if you bring in Medibank or another provider over the top? The service is nearly half subsidised by the university. They won't want to take the risk with a data bank, with producing a data bank where it's open to litigation when it's run by another provider. Well, they'd be nuts to, Mr. Speaker. Why on earth is the government proposing to go against World Health Organization best practice guidelines? Why on earth is it wanting to do that? Why is it wanting to make New Zealander an outlier and doing away with a world-class service? Where is the transparency in this process? I urge New Zealand citizens to go to the labor.org website and sign the petition to save the 0800 poisons number. It is a world-class service, Mr Speaker. It needs to be preserved. Questions need to be answered by the Minister of Health. In these supplementary estimates, money is swishing around in relation to these helplines. The Minister needs to take a call and explain why it's doing this to New Zealanders.
I call the honourable member Tim McIndoe.
Thank you, sir.